welcome to the No Fear Sock Knitting class online. My name is Denise, and this is class 2, Casting On. I'm so excited. We are going to be knitting today, you guys, and I am so excited, and I know you've all been waiting for this, so I just have a couple of things to cover before we jump into it. I'm glancing at my notes as always. The first thing is just a little bit of admin. And I had a question about announcements. And I think it's a very, very valid concern and question. Many people that are here on YouTube are not on Instagram. And that is 100% fine, and I totally understand that. But the concern is, how will the YouTube people get announcements about either upcoming classes, upcoming events, when project bags and items go on sale? And versus the Instagram people. So my solution to that is, because the YouTube people are only seeing me once a week and I'm on Instagram daily, any shop announcements, any project bag sales, anything that's going on sale, or anything, any announcements. I know I'm stuttering a little bit. I don't know why I'm always so nervous at the beginning of these classes, and then I find my groove. I feel like everyone is sitting in front of me. So anything that will go on sale, any announcements, anything that's time sensitive, that's what I want to say. Anything that's time sensitive, I will announce it on Saturday morning when the class goes live. So you will see it right at the beginning of the video, and it will also be announced on Instagram at the same time. So if the video comes out at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the announcement's right at the beginning of the class, then the announcement will also go live on Instagram at the same time. That way, everybody, that's about as close as I can to making it fair, so that Instagram and YouTube get the announcements at the same time. And then the items themselves will not go on sale until the following day, or whatever day I decide. It could be that Sunday, it could be Monday. But one group of viewers will not get a head start over the other group. And that is a very, very valid concern and question, and I want to make that as fair as possible for everyone. The other thing is, as I'm talking and getting excited and we're discussing socks and everything else, there are going to be times when I may forget to add a bit of information. And then as I'm editing, when I go back and edit the videos, I'm like, oops, gosh, I forgot to say this. So for example, in the last class, I talked about the needles we were going to be using, the brands, and the length of the needle itself, but I didn't talk about what size needle to use. I noticed that in the editing, and I put it down as a little footnote on the bottom of the screen. But I still got a lot of questions with people saying, oh, you didn't say what needle size you'd forgot to mention, you didn't say. And I think because it was a first video and it was just sort of information, a lot of people were listening but not necessarily looking at the screen. So going forward, if you miss me saying it or you don't hear me say it, I may have written it on the screen. So you may have to kind of go back, just backtrack a little bit and see if it's written on the screen, or I will add it, and I will add it in the description box down below. So I apologize for that little mix-up from last class, but that would be my solution, to add it during the editing. So definitely listen and look to get all of the information. So that is an item number 1. Item number 2 is, today is Wednesday. It is February 5th. I'm recording this on Wednesday, February 5th. And the pattern as of now has not been released. There's so many questions from everyone. Where's your pattern? I can't find it. Where's it going to be released? Once it is released, it will be on Ravelry. Right now, that will be the only place to purchase it. And as I said in my Insta story yesterday, but the YouTube people aren't going to see that. The YouTube only people will not see that. So I'm saying it here. I want the pattern to be as beginner friendly as possible. And I know in my experience from looking at patterns that sometimes things aren't clear, or the designer, the writer of the pattern will assume that that's understood. So, and then there are omissions, but there's reasons for the omission. So I'm trying to make the pattern as user friendly as possible. I have been talking about it for quite some time. Some of you may be frustrated by waiting for it, but I ask that you do wait, because I really think it will be much more user-friendly once it comes out. And I'd rather do it right than get messages, an onslaught of messages from you with concerns and frustrations. I don't understand, or you left out, or I can't find, or this isn't clear. So I'm trying to make it as clear as possible. You will not have to wait long. It is being proofread right now. I have test knit to make sure that all of the numbers are working. So and you don't need it to start today's class. You absolutely do not need it to get started today. All you need to know are how many stitches to cast on and how many rounds. So if you can just make a note, if you are knitting, there's 3 sizes in the pattern. There are going to be 3 sizes: a small, medium, and large. I will be covering later on how to customize patterns to suit if your feet maybe fall somewhere between those sizes or may have features that you want to accommodate in your socks. So we will cover that later. For now, for the sake of starting, you're going to be casting on, if you have a small size foot, you're going to be casting on 56 stitches. If you are a medium, we're casting on 64. And for the demo, I'm going to be working over 64 stitches. If you are a large size foot, then you're casting on 72 stitches. You will be knitting in a knit 2, purl 2 rib for 15 rounds. Once your rounds that is your cuff. Once your cuff is finished, you will be doing another 15 rounds of just plain stockinette. That's all you need to start. The needle size, again, if you are a looser knitter, if your stitches tend to be a little bit more loose, you want to reduce your needle size to accommodate for that, and you want to knit on a 2.25 millimeter needle. As I said last week, that number does not always, sometimes it does, but does not always have a corresponding US number. Someone sent me a message and said, well, a 2.25 is a 1 and a 2.5 is a 1.5. That may be the case with a certain brand. There are other brands that do not have corresponding sizes. So it's a 2.25 millimeter needle that you want to use if you tend to be a little bit of a loose knitter. If you tend to be a little more of a tight knitter, then you want to increase your needle size to a 2.5 millimeter needle. That way, the needle will help you loosen up your stitches a little bit. You definitely don't want to choke or tighten up too tight on those stitches. You want your fabric to have negative ease, which means when you put the sock on, you want it to have to stretch to fit over your foot. The type of sock we are knitting now is a sock to fit into your shoes. It's a normal standard sock. And you definitely want that to cling to your foot, but again, not overstretch on your foot. And I will cover that issue later when we talk about customizing, because that was a concern for some people as well, that they get stretching and it's too tight, etc. So, and you're working at a gauge of 8 to 9 stitches to the inch. Again, that's 8 to 9 stitches to the inch. That is a comfortable size. It creates a comfortable fabric. It creates a flexible fabric. And that's kind of a standard for sock yarns, commercial sock yarn, hand-dyed sock yarn in general. That covers number 2. Number 3, I'm going to start today's class. I'm going to talk about the big question, rather than doing it at the end, because that is relevant to the casting on. And a lot of people, the question is, how do I cast on so that the sock will fit, that I can get the sock on? A lot of people have issues with, excuse me, a lot of people have issues with the cuff being too tight, that first cast on edge being too tight within your sock. And you definitely don't want that. If you are working over, and all of this information too, that's the other thing I wanted to say, all of this information, we are covering 2 circular needles and magic loop, but all of this information for the most part can be applied to double pointed needles and 9-inch. So if you have a little more experience and you've already started and you're casting on and you're working on your sock, you don't want to get to the end of your sock and you've grafted your toe and you go to put it on and, oh my gosh, this won't fit. How disappointing and upsetting would that be? So what you want to do is cast on. There's 2 solutions that I I'm aware of and I'm going to share here. One is casting on over 2 needles. We are going to be doing a basic long tail cast on. You want to cast on over 2 needles. So you're going to hold the 2 ends of your circular needle together, whether you're doing 2 circular or magic loop, it doesn't matter. Hold the 2 needles side by side, and I have that right here. You're going to hold the 2 needles together. Oops, like this. Just like that. And you're going to cast on over the 2. When you're done and all of your stitches are on the needle, you're going to slide 1 needle out, turn, and then continue with your casting on. The stitches will look a little floppy, they will look a little oversized, but that will give you a little extra room. Some people don't like that method because it makes the cast on edge look a little bit, I don't want to say sloppy, but look a little uneven. And maybe a little inconsistent with the rest of the cuff. Another solution is learning how to control the tension in your hand. And that's what I'm going to be demonstrating when I cast on for you in just a minute. So you can control the tension, and depending on where you hold, if you're up close and you're casting on and your hand is here and the needle is here, your stitches are going to be a little bit tighter. If you give yourself a little more room between holding the yarn and casting on, that distance is also going to give you the extra flexibility in the extra space and make the stitches a little more loose, which is what you need without them being overly loose by casting on over 2. There are, and let's just say this now, there are no knitting police. There is no absolute right or absolute wrong way to do things. You have to do things in a way that works for you. I'm giving you the tools that you will then take and use the way you see fit. One method may make more sense to you. Another method may say, I can't control my hand. I don't know how to do that. I'm just going to cast on over 2. If it works for you and you love the result, then go for it. That is the goal for this class. So I have covered those 3 things. I will add that the information about the size and how many stitches to cast on. I will have that in the description box for you down below, so you don't have to try to remember what I said. I will have it down for you below to reference. So enough admin. I think I've covered everything. Let's start knitting, you guys. I'll see you in just a second. So we're going to start off with the 2 circular needle method. I've got my needles here and my yarn, and let's cast on. So what you want to do here is cast on over, as I just said in the beginning, you can cast on over 2 needles by holding the 2 needles together. For this class, I'm going to be casting on over 1. So I'm just going to put my other needle to the side for a moment, and we're just going to do a standard long tail cast on. So how do you know how much yarn to use for your long tail cast on? An absolute guarantee is to just go from your hand. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit so you can see me. That is a book that I'm using here off to the side to get the camera here at just the right angle. Let's zoom back out. There you go. That's better. I think you can still see. So what you want to do here is you've got your yarn. You want to hold the tail in your left hand, and then you're just going to stretch it from your hand to your elbow. And that's 10, 20, 30. And you get the basic gist of what I'm doing. I'm going from, okay, I'll zoom out one more time so you can see. And I'm just going from my hand to my elbow. Okay, and that's going to tell me, now it may seem like an excessive amount, but it's always better to have more than to have less. So let me zoom back in a little bit. So again, we are casting on for this. We will be casting on 64 stitches. I have been knitting for a little while, so I also know that that is approximately 10 stitches. Another method of figuring this out is to wrap it around your needle 10 times. Or actually 20 is probably a little bit better, because then 2 wraps per stitch. So you can just wrap it around like this. Okay, so if you're casting on 64, then you want to wrap 168 times, which sounds like a lot, but it's definitely a good way to figure out how, another method of figuring out how much yarn you need. So let's just slide this off and we're going to get started. So we've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and I'll give myself a little bit more. So to cast on, we all know how to do the long tail cast on. I will not bore you with that, but I will demonstrate holding your tension. So I do not make a slip knot when I start. What I do is hold my yarn, my needle upside down, right in here. Can you see that? And then I just turn my needle right side up, and that is my first stitch. I will do that again. I've got my yarn in my hand ready for the long tail cast on. My needle is upside down, and I come on the inside in this space between my hand and the yarn, upside down, and I just turn my needle right side up, and there is my first stitch. I am then going to pull back just like a slingshot, and I'm going to start, and there's no real need to hold that, but I just kind of rest my finger there. You're going to now start casting on, just a regular long tail cast on. Now, by putting your needle back into place, notice the distance here. I am not tightening at all. I'm just rhythmically and slowly going through. Now, can you see that those stitches are rather loose there? There's a little bit of space. And when you stretch them out, you can see the space. Now, if I choke up on this a little bit and cast on really tight and pull, I'll show you the difference. And pull really tight. Can you see the difference? Okay, you're aiming for this, not this. This is way too tight. It will frustrate you because the cuff will be too tight. It will also frustrate you when you start knitting because you will not be able to get your needle into that stitch in order to start. You will be very, very frustrated. So you are definitely aiming for a cast on that looks more like this. I will also show you what this looks like over 2 needles. So let me grab the other end. Okay, I am now holding 2. I will do the same thing, upside down, right side up, and I'm going to cast on. Nice and slow. Whoops. There we go. Nice and slow. Just going to do a few to show you. I'm catching. You have to definitely do this slowly. Okay, so now I've got maybe, 8 stitches on there, 8 or 9 stitches. So when I pull one needle out, there you go. Your stitches are nice and loose and ready to be worked. It's not a dramatically loose difference, okay, but there is still a difference between this and what I did just now. You choose the method that works for you. You may think this may work once you get started. Some of you may not like it. You've got some options. That's the whole point of knitting, that there are so many options to get started. But this is what the cast on will look like over 2 needles. So now I am going to cast on my 64 stitches. So what you're going to do there, again, is get yourself situated here. And you're going to start your cast on. And I will see you. Now, for this method, you are going to cast on all of your stitches on 1 needle. All 64 stitches are going to be cast on 1 circular needle. My other circular needle is just hanging out. I'm not interested in it right now. It's just waiting for me. So cast on, and I will see you in a second. So all of my stitches are now on 1 needle. Everything is cast on, and I am ready to transfer half of these stitches onto my second needle. So if you've cast on 56 stitches, you're going to transfer 28 onto this needle. We've cast on 64, so we're going to transfer 32. And if you're working with 72 stitches, then you're going to transfer 36. I think I did that right. So here we go. Now you're going to slide these stitches from 1 needle to the other as if to purl. Now, by slipping them as if to purl, you are keeping the stitches in the right position on the needle. So I'm going to just very simply move these over. Just gently going in as if to purl and moving them over. This is what slipping purl-wise looks like. So I'm just going to slip. I'll slow down. Just move them over. and slip all of these stitches over. Okay, once I've done that, then I will show you the next step. I have now moved half of my stitches from this needle onto this needle, from my left needle to my right. Now, this end is closed. I need to close this end. So what I'm going to do is now hold these together, and I'm going to slide them, hold your stitches, pull your needles out, and you're going to slide them very carefully onto your other needle. And there you go. I've just moved them from one needle to the other. Now the opening is now at the bottom, which was at the top before. It's now at the bottom, and now I have to close this end. Now, can you just start knitting? Yes, you can. Are you going to get a bit of a space like this? Yes. So to avoid that space, what I like to do, and the way I was taught, is you also want to, I'll show you that in one sec, you also want to be sure that all of the bottoms of the stitches are facing each other, are facing in. You don't want this to happen. That is a twist. If what we're going to do is cross this stitch here and this stitch here. If you have a twist in your stitches before you do this transfer, you cannot undo it. You will not be able to undo it, and you're going to have a twist in your sock, and you'll have to start again. So make sure that the base or the bottom of all of your stitches are facing in the middle. They're in between the two needles. And then what you're going to do is slide these over. Now I'm looking through my camera while I do this, so I apologize if I'm a little clumsy while I'm doing it, but I'm not doing this the way I normally would be knitting. So I'm going to move this stitch over very carefully. You will not drop it, and you're just going to catch it on the other needle. There. I will do that again. It was right here. Now I've split it a little bit, but don't worry about that. You're going to move it over to slide it off and pop it on. And you can see the hole, of course you can't see it, the hole is right there. So you just want to slide your needle right on, and you're good to go. Now, in order to move what's now the second stitch over here, you will grab the other end. It doesn't matter which end, just grab a needle point. And it has the flexibility because it was the last stitch you cast on. You're going to move that stitch from one needle over to the other. Now, it's a little bit loose, so you're going to grab your end under here and then just tighten that up. That's all you have to do. And now your two ends are joined. Now there is a gap there. Do not worry about that gap. Once you start knitting, I'm just going to tighten this up a little. Once you start knitting, that gap is going to disappear. And it is a very different gap than what you would have gotten had you just started knitting in the round. Trust me on that one. So now, here are your needles. You're ready to go. You are going to turn this way. You're holding it this way to transfer your needles. You're now going to turn it this way. Okay? You're going to pull this back needle out because you're going to start your working yarn, which is right here's your tail. Here's your working yarn. And this tail may get on your nerves and you may end up picking it up. You can just cut it off. So you know what? We're just going to go like that and break that off so that you don't accidentally pick up the wrong end. So your working yarn now is coming from this back needle. Can everybody see that? And I'm going to explain what that little dot means in a minute. It's coming from your back needle. So pull this out. I don't care about that right now. You're going to hold this front needle and you're going to trace it with your hand until you are back in position. I just moved the camera out a little bit for you to see. Now, why is there a dot of nail polish there and there? Can everybody see that? What I did, I just took a plain old bottle of nail polish right here. This is Essie. It's very naughty. Just in case you needed to know, I just took a little dot of nail polish and I put a dot here and a dot here. When you are learning how to do this, you always want to grab the other end of the needle. Okay? If you grab the wrong ends, if you grab opposite ends, one of your needles is going to fall out. Again, ask me how I know that. So once you've got your needles into position, you're going to find your little nail polish point, and this does not damage your needle in any way. There is no friction. It is totally smooth. It is just the tiniest little brush stroke so that you know you've got one needle here. You grab your other end and you look for the other nail polish. So you're like, oh, okay, there's my 2 nail polish spots. I know I've got the right needle. Now I'm ready to start. That is a guaranteed way. When I demoed this before, I did another tutorial, and when I demoed this, I used 2 different color needles. That is not going to be the case for most of you. You're definitely going to be using the same brand of needle, so you want to be sure that you've got the right one. So now, once you've got yourself all situated, you've got the matching ends, you're just going to start knitting. Now, where is my yarn coming from? Let's make this as clear as I can. I'm going to go into the first stitch. I'm going to grab my working yarn. That's my tail. My working yarn is between the needles. Can you see that? I'm going to hold this in place. My working yarn is between the needle. I want to bring it up and out and in the back of the 2 needles. I'm going to grab it and start knitting. And I'm going to knit 2, bring the yarn between the needles just like you would for ribbing, and purl 2. And you're going to keep doing that across the end of the row, and then I will show you what to do when you get to the other end. So you're going to continue with the ribbing across this first half, and then we'll talk about what to do here. So I've now worked to the other end of the needle. I have 2 stitches left. As you can see here, I just finished 2 knit stitches, so I'm ready to do 2 purls. Bring my yarn in place, and I'm going to purl those last 2 stitches. Now, when you're looking at this, how do you know? One thing that happens with the 2 circular method of knitting is your needles tend to roll, or it feels like they're rolling. So what I recommend to people, you see this edge? It looks like the stitches are just kind of laced over the other. On the right side, this is happening on the right side of the fabric. On the wrong side of the fabric, they look like distinct purl bumps. You've got these long threads on the front, on the right side, and you've got these purl bumps on the wrong side. What you're going to do is take a removable marker. I chose green because green is where we're starting, so I chose green. You're going to take the marker, and you're just going to slide. It doesn't matter where you put it, but you're just going to slide that in so that you know you're on the right side. Okay, that is the right side of your fabric. You are looking for this marker. If the marker's on the marker has to be facing you when you're knitting. So you are now knitting across. So now I'm done. I've done my last 2. Now how do I get to the other side? The back of my hand is facing me right now. So as I was knitting, I was in this position. You're going to turn your hand so the palm of your hand is facing you. Okay, make sure your yarn, and I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a little bit frustrating and a little bit fiddly in the very beginning because you don't have the fabric of the sock yet weighting this down to give you sort of an anchor so that your stitches, your needles rather, stay into place. Just stick with it, go slowly. This is the beauty of having a video that you can watch over and over and over again until you get it. Don't worry about that space either. We're going to close that space right now. So now the needle I was just working on is now in the back. I'm ready to work on my new needle. So I'm going to pull this needle out of place. I'm holding my stitches, and I'm going to push this needle in place. Okay, I'm holding on to the tip the way I did just now, and I am going to trace the other end. Now, guess what, guys? There's no needle, there's no nail polish on this end, so I know I've grabbed the correct and corresponding points. So now I'm ready to start. My yarn, when I did the purl stitch, let's see if you can see this. When I did the purl stitch, my yarn ended up here at the back. So I finished with my purl. It's still in the back, that's the where it's supposed to be, but now if you bring this up and over, do you see what's happening there? You're creating a yarn over. This is something that happens very, very frequently with 2 circular needles or with magic loop. You're going to suddenly create a yarn over. What you want to do is bring this, again, between the needles, just the way we did when we started. Bring it between the needles so that it is now coming over the top here. This is where you were. You don't want the yarn coming from this side. You want the yarn coming from this side, from the front. So it's between the two needles. So I'm going to grab my other end and I'm going to start with my knit stitch because now I'm ready to do 2 knits. And here I am. Now, with the 2 circular method, you're knitting the first half, then you're knitting your second half. First half, second half. Your sock is divided in 2. How do you know when you've only gone, if you put this down, even if you've got a good amount of fabric created, if you put this down to answer the phone, do something in the kitchen, whatever you do, to stop, it's the end of the day, you're at your train station stop, whatever. If you put this in your bag and you pick it up and you're like, wait a second, now where am I? What do I do now? Your working yarn and your tail are on opposite ends. That means you've only knit across half of your stitches. You still have this remaining half to go. When your working yarn and your tail are on the same side, you know you have completed a round and you are back at the beginning. So now I'm going to take another removable marker. Here is my red. Okay, green for go, red for stop. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it same position, same thing. I'm going to just slide it into the loops across the bottom. I'm going to close it. And there I am. I have added another removable marker to the right side. There's the front, here's the back. And I'm going to continue knitting until my working yarn, which is here, and my tail are back in the same position and I have completed my first round. So I will do that and I'll be right back. I am now 2 stitches away from the end of the second half and I'm going to purl those 2. Whoops, splitting it a little. I'm going to purl those last 2. And now I'm done. Again, my hand is in the same position. This is how I just ended. I'm going to drop that other needle. The back of my hand's facing me. I'm going to turn it. Whoops, let's push that into place. And now I'm ready to start knitting the second round. I'm going to pull this needle out. I'm finished with it. I'm done. I'm going to grab this needle, push it into place. Whoop, 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 whoop. Here we go. This needle has my nail polish on it. There it is. I'm going to find my other end. There is, where is it? There's my nail polish. And I am ready to continue knitting. And you're just going to keep working. Now, if I put this down, now let's say you've got your needle here. Okay? And you're done. Okay? And you pull this out and something distracts you and you drop this. Okay, so now what? You pick this back up and it's all twisted and you're not quite sure what to do. What do I do now? What do I do with this? You're going to just orient yourself. Make sure your markers are hanging in the right place. Okay, your markers are on the outside. They are not on the inside. Look for your markers. You know that your stitches are going to be lined up so you don't accidentally start knitting in here. You don't want to start knitting on the wrong side. You want to look for your markers. What's happening over here? My working yarn and my tail are both on the same side. I am at the beginning of a round and I am ready to start knitting. Push your needle into place. Trace your other end. Look for your nail polish marks. There they are. And you're going to start. Again, make sure your yarn is now coming. Move this needle because you want your yarn to be coming from the middle. Now, look at where your yarn was. Same thing. If you started, your yarn was going to come from over the top and create another yarn. Well, I'm holding the tail as well. Drop the tail. Just going to pick this up. And again, it is fiddly in the beginning, you guys. I'm not going to lie. Hold on, hold on. Of course, because I'm trying to teach, it's not behaving. So it was here. You don't want that. Bring it in between. Get yourself situated and start knitting. Now, give it a little extra tug. What's going to happen? How do you avoid ladders now? And we're going to talk about this more as we go on. But how do you, excuse me, how do you avoid ladders so that you can close up this space? Here it is. See that little space in there? That space looks a little too big. What you want to do when you go into the stitch, yarn's in the right place, you're going to knit the first stitch. When you go into the second stitch, this needle, the cable is behind the needle you're working on. Push it in front. I'll do that again. The cable from the needle that you finished with, your back needle, is in the back. Makes sense. You want to actually slide it in front of the needle you're working on. When you give this an extra tug, did you see what just happened? You pulled that space closed. Let's do that again. Here is the back needle. Here is the space that you're trying to close. It's right in here. So you want to push this needle in the front, like this, go into the second stitch, which is where I am, and give it an extra tug. Okay, now just move needle in the front because now you're purling. And if you give it a good tug, it's going to stay there. It's going to stay in the front. You want that to happen. It's going to take you a little while to get used to the flow and how this feels in your hands, but you will get used to it. Knitting is practice, 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 practice. It is repetition. It is doing this over and over again. So I'm actually in real time this time going to knit across. Some of you may find this boring and you can just fast forward through this part, but I'm actually going to just knit right across and just kind of keep talking. So now again, my stitches, here are the stitches that I put my marker. And guess what? We are now knitting a sock, you guys. I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to keep working across. And as you can see, my other needle is just hanging out. Don't care about it right now. Just knitting across. Okay, get to the other side. We're almost there. Do-de-do-de-do. Maybe I'll put some music in the background here because this may be watching paint dry to some of you. But I do think it's important to watch this kind of in real time rather than me jumping ahead just so you can see what's happening. I'm back at the end. I am going to purl these last two stitches. I'm going to turn again so you can see it. I'm done. Drop this one. And when I'm using double points, this is why I don't like double points. My habit is to drop this. If this is a double point, it's not connected to anything. I drop it, it rolls, it's lost, and now what do? So I'm here. I'm going to turn. Make sure I'm in the right position. Now, aha! See how this just rolled? Did everybody see that? So now wait a second. Why am I on the wrong side? What you want to do here, I twisted it. So you just want to get yourself, again, situated back in the right place. That's going to happen from time to time, which is totally fine. I just went off camera. Pull this back needle out of the way. Pull the front needle into place. And again, it may look twisted, but because it was straight when you cast on, you cannot suddenly twist in the middle of the row. Just rearrange yourself a little bit and you're good to go. You're going to slide this needle back into place. Right at the beginning, trace your other end, and you're going to continue. That is basically what you're doing for knitting socks on two circular needles. You're knitting across one, knitting across the other, cross one, cross the other. You're going to lap one cable under the other to avoid the space, and all of this is going to start to tighten up, and it will look like the cuff of a sock. So I'm going to now demonstrate. So that is your two circular needle cast on. I am now going to demonstrate how to do this with magic loop. And this same instruction applies, what I'm about to say applies to both. You're just going to continue working in a knit two, purl two rib across, round and around and around for 15 rounds. Does not matter how many stitches you have cast on. The general instruction for everyone is 15 rounds of ribbing and then 15 rounds of stockinette. Those are the beginning instructions for the Shorty pattern. So that is basically it right now for knitting on two circular needles. Now we're going to do magic loop. Now it's time to knit our socks using the magic loop method. I have got my, it is also a 2.25 millimeter needle, and it has a 40-inch cable. If 40 inches again is too long for some people, please feel free to use a 32. It is personal preference. I am a little more comfortable doing this on a 40-inch needle. So I'm going to now cast on. We are going to cast on just the same way that we did for the 2 circular method. I am going to cast all of my stitches onto one needle, and I'm going to again use a long tail cast on. So I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm going to do a long tail cast on. You can do the same thing. And just going forward with this, you guys, I suggest, even if you have a preference for one method over the other, I do still recommend watching both methods, because there may be a tip or a suggestion or an idea that I say with one that I may not repeat or may forget to repeat with another method, or I may say it with magic loop and not with 2 circ, or say it with 2 circ and not with magic loop. So there's definitely going to be tips and tricks for both methods, sometimes within one technique, sometimes within the other technique. So it is definitely beneficial to watch the entire video. I will try to timestamp so that you know when the 2 circular technique is being shown and when the magic loop technique is being shown, if that helps you. But I do strongly recommend watching the whole thing, because there's definitely things to be learned from both techniques. So once again, long tail cast on. This is what I did when I get started. I do not put a knot in. So I am going to, I just hold my yarn here, put my needle in, upside down, turn it right side up, and then I'm going to start with my long tail cast on. And I'm going to, and as I said in the beginning, the reason I said in the beginning is to just now to watch the whole thing, is I did demonstrate already how to, at the beginning of the 2 circ portion, I did demonstrate how to cast on over 2 needles and how to control your tension if you are casting on over 1. Right now I'm just going to cast on 64 stitches. I'm using the medium size sock instructions for this demo. So I'm going to just do my normal long tail cast on. And as you can see, I've got a lot of distance in here. You want your cast on to be nice and loose. Okay, this is exactly what I did just now. You definitely want this cast on edge to be loose and flexible and just glide over your needle. So I'm going to cast on a full 64 stitches onto one needle, and I will meet you back here in just a second. All of my stitches, 64 stitches, have now been cast on to the needle. So now I am ready to divide these in half over the cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count and find the midpoint. So I've cast on 64 stitches, so I'm going to count 32. So 2, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. So I'm going to just slide these onto the cable. And here is my midpoint. So there's 32 stitches here, holding my midpoint, and there are 32 stitches here. What you want to do for the magic loop method, this is the trick of the magic loop, why you're only using one needle. You are going to very carefully hold on to this cable. You're going to bend it in half, hold on to the cable, and you're going to pull it through. Look at that, you guys. Okay, I'm going to turn this just to get my needles all straightened out. And there we are. This is what this now looks like. Okay, I'm going to do that again because I'm sure some of you are like, wait, what just happened? I'm going to pull this needle back out. I'm going to pull the needle back out. So I'm removing the cable from between the stitches, and I am now back in the place where I started. Okay, so I already know that little gap is at the halfway point. So you're going to once again slide all these stitches onto the cable, just like this. They're on the cable of the needle. Hope this is clear for everyone. There you go. You're going to find your midpoint, counting 32, and 32, you're going to bend this and pull the cable through. As you can see, this needle is moving here because it's getting into position. Now, here's where I am, and I just need to straighten these stitches out. So I'm going to slide them and slide this over the cable gently. Okay, now I'm going to turn. So my open end, we're in this pretty much the same thing we just did for 2 circs. I'm going to put this in between here. Okay, the bottom is open. The bottom is the closed portion. So now you want to close in here. All right. So now what you can do, I'm going to turn this. Now, as you can see, this was the last stitch that I cast on. This is the first stitch that was cast on. I'm just going to turn this because I want the first stitch that I cast on to be on the right and the last stitch that I cast on to be on my left. I'm going to do the same thing I did before, is make sure that the bottoms of all the stitches are in the right place. Let's just move that out of the way. Are in the right place. The bottom's open. We're going to close this gap up here. Okay, so everything is straight, nothing is twisted. Again, you don't want to do this. You definitely want everything to be straight on your needles. And I'm going to transfer these 2 stitches. Now, I showed you how to transfer them just now. I'm also going to show you now how to do it when you don't transfer the stitches, because some of you may find that a little too tricky and annoying and, well, I dropped it and I'm afraid to hold on to it and let it go. So I'm going to start knitting. So everything is in the right place. My cable is kind of just hanging out there. Can everybody see that? I'm holding my stitches, holding my needles. I'm going to pull this back needle out of the way. I'm going to hold on here. Just rearrange those a little bit. I'm going to hold on here. And what you want to do now is pull this all the way out so that you are now ready to knit. And what's happening here is your needle, here's the cable that's hanging out on that side. This is what I showed you in last week's class, or actually in the first class. So now when we were discussing the length of the needles, then here is the other half. This is hanging out here. So now what I want to start to do is bring the yarn in the front, the same thing. I'm going to insert into my first stitch. I'm going to find my working yarn, keep my tail out of the way. I'm going to find my working yarn and I'm going to start knitting. Now, you see that big space in there? When you go into the next stitch, give it an extra tug. Okay, and then you're going to start. Now, the same way that I taught you how to avoid ladders, this cable is coming in the back. You want to bring this into the front. That is how you avoid the ladders when you're working with the magic loop. So I've done 2 knit stitches. Same instructions apply. We're just going to do a knit 2, purl 2, rib, and I'm going to start purling across, knitting and purling across. So I will see you in just a second when I get to the other side. And I'm just, now again, this cable just kind of has to be trained to kind of get out of your way. And again, once you have more fabric hanging, it will weight down the cable and this twisting is not going to happen much anymore. Okay, so I will see you then on the other end. I've now knit across and I have 2 stitches left to purl. So I'm going to purl those 2. And the same thing that we did with the magic loop method, I'm going to put a marker. Here is my marker. I'm going to put a marker in place. I decided to go with green because green is go. And I'm going to slide that marker into one of the loops so that I know I am on the right side. Okay, oops, of course this doesn't want to work for me. There we go. All right, so I know that I'm on the right side. So now what do? You're going to let this go. I'm going to turn. The back of my hand's facing me. I'm going to turn, get my yarn in the right place. And again, guys, I'm looking through the camera doing this, so it feels a little bit confusing to me. Okay, so here we go. Now, my yarn is coming from here. I'm going to slide push this needle into place right here. This is now, I'm looking for this front needle, so I'm going to push this into place, and you just kind of have to jostle with the stitches a little bit over your needle. Okay, over the join, which of course is giving me a hard time right now. Hold on, so I don't poke there we go. Okay, so push my needles into place. I'm going to do the same thing that I just did. My yarn's coming from here. I'm going to pull this needle out so that I'm back in the right position, and I'm going to continue knitting. I ended with 2 purls, so I'm going to start with 2 knits. Again, I want to be sure that the yarn is coming between the cable and the needle. If it comes from underneath, you're going to get a yarn over by bringing it over. So you want to be sure it's in place, and you're going to continue knitting. Just like that. And then I will see you at the other end in just a second. So I have now worked across the second half of my sock on the magic loop, and I'm going to place another marker right in here. Same thing that I did with the 2 circ method. And there we go. So, and the same thing applies if I know that my working yarn and tail, so I'm going to do the last 2 stitches. And they are 2 purls. Whoops, there we go. Okay, same thing, back of my hands facing. I'm going to let this go. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to push this needle into place. And it doesn't really matter with magic loop whether I pull this one out and push this one back in first, or pull it out first and then push the back needle back in. It really does not matter. Magic loop and the 2 circ method are so similar. It's just that you're working over one, but the sock is still divided in half. You still have the front and the back. It's very similar. So that's why I said, please watch both sections, whether I'm teaching the 2 circ method or the magic loop, because there are going to be a lot of things that can be applied to both. I will try my best to demonstrate them all, but I definitely suggest that you watch both. So now the same thing, we are ready to start again. Make sure that the yarn, now look, my yarn is coming from here. If I grab it, it's behind, but it's under. If I grab this, I'm going to get a yarn over. You do not want that. Again, bring the yarn in front, okay, so that it is now coming from, not in front, but make sure that the working yarn is coming from between the cable and the needle, and I'm going to continue knitting across in the same fashion. So again, you are working over, your stitches are here, okay, and even if it rolls, which it started to do just now, you guys saw that, right? So as long as your markers are on the outside and they're draped over these longer stitches and not over the purl bumps, which is the wrong side, you know that everything is in the right place and you're good to go, okay? So now I'm just going to continue knitting across here, and then I'm going to show you on a finished sock exactly what you're doing so that you understand, and then we're going to wrap this video up. So I will see you in just a bit. So here we are again at the end of the row, the end of the second half, and I'm going to purl 2. And I have just completed an entire round, my first round, using the magic loop. So I'm going to push this needle into place, and just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to pull this one, and now I'm pausing. So this is what you should look like. This is what should, wait a minute. Yes. So now this is where we should be. Oh, did I? You know what? I think I just made a mistake, you guys. I think I rolled it. Haha. I'm so glad that happened. Magic loop is not my go-to, but I'm so glad that this just happened. What happened is I was in this position and I started knitting. So I'm going to undo that and I will be right back. Hello again. Okay, it wasn't a mistake. I know exactly what I did. I had already started round 2, so I had only gone halfway through the second round, but it looked as if I had rolled it. So again, looking through the camera like this can be a little tricky, but anyway, So I am now finishing the last 2 stitches on round 2. So I'm going to turn this. So we've got 2 rounds here, we've got 2 rounds. My working yarn and my tail are back on the same side, so I know that I am now complete. So what I'm going to do is still push this one. I'm done knitting on this for now. I'm going to put this down. So what you can do is just slide this onto your cable. Okay, you've slid your sock onto the cable. It is now safe. You can see the whole thing. So here is the cable. Here are the needle, cable end, needle end. Your stitches are safe and secure in the center, and nothing will move, nothing will drop. You're good to go. So here is our magic loop. Here is our 2 circs, looking very, very similar. And there we go, guys. We have just cast on our sock. So we're going to move this over. And just so you see what you're creating, this is what you're going to ultimately be making. Okay, let's zoom this out just a little bit so you can see. There you go. And that's what you're going to be making. So right now we are working right here on this cuff. As you can see, the cuff is super duper stretchy. This is definitely going to go over my foot with no problem. And we're going to continue 15 rounds of your cuff. You're going to do 15 rounds of just plain blissful stockinette. And that, so you're going in this direction. We've started here. Okay, even though it's top down, it kind of looks like you're knitting upside down. And that's something that no one ever says. But when you think top down, you think you're here and kind of working in this direction, but you're actually working in this direction. It's the same thing, but you're starting at this edge and working your way down to the toe. Okay, so we've done here, we've done this. We're going to be working on our cuff, working on our leg, and then we're going to start this beautiful heel. This will probably, by the time we get to class 4, we're going to be up to the heel. Next week's class, we're going to cover just working in stockinette and reading patterns. And then I will just explain the construction of the heel so everybody is ready to do that by class 4. Okay? There we go. I'll see you in just a sec. Oh my gosh, you guys, you've just cast on your socks. Are you excited? Are you as excited as I am? This absolutely positively never gets old. I love it so much. I am so excited. I hope that you're all excited. And you know what? Again, I'm not going to lie. Please be patient with yourselves. Please take your time. Learning something new is challenging, whether it's learning socks or learning maths or learning whatever it is that you're learning. Yoga, it doesn't matter what you're learning. It is going to be frustrating. Even the 5-year-old learning ABCs to the mature PhD at the university who is learning a new language. It doesn't matter what you're learning. Starting with something new can be frustrating. Please stick with it. Please go slowly. Do not compare your work to someone else's. Don't compare your stitches to someone else's. Take your time. These are your stitches, your needles, your yarn. Work with the materials that you have. Go slowly. Watch the video over and over and over. This is also the beauty of this format for both the student and for me personally, the teacher. I'm happy to do these videos. I am enjoying them. But again, there is a little bit of a distance. So I've provided the information and you then have, as the student, the opportunity to watch it over and over again without feeling like, oh, I don't really want to bother the teacher again. I don't want to have to ask the same question again. Oh, I wish she could show me that again. You know what? You can watch it over and over and over. That's the beauty of video. That is the beauty of this platform. You can be up at any day, hour, day, or night. It does not matter. And you can, I was using my glasses because, again, I was looking through the camera as I was doing this, and this is always my resting point. You can watch this over and over again. You can slow it down. You can speed it up. You can pause it right at that moment. And if you're really, really, really positively stuck, then send me a message and we'll see what we can do. I will either try to demo it again, or what I do recommend, this class is not the class. It's not the one and only. You may find another video out there, and I will leave that searching to you. You may find that another tutorial out there somewhere for casting on 2 circular needles or casting on over magic loop that just works better for you. It speaks to you in a different way. The camera angle may be different. It could be a combination of all of those things that helps you understand it a little bit better. I have no ego with any of this, and I'm fully transparent. If you've been watching me for a little while, I think you all know that already. I'm just here to help guide you. I'm not saying my way is the way. Of course not. I'm just here to provide you with the information, and I really do hope that you found this video helpful. Again, stick with it. I know you all are waiting for the pattern, but you don't need it to get started. This is what our shorty sock is going to look like. Here it is. This yarn, we have to, isn't this beautiful? Can we just talk about this yarn for just a second, please? Can we just talk about it? I love this so much. This is Tea for Two by Legacy. I'm looking in the wrong place. This is Tea for Two by Legacy Fiber Arts. This is on their steel toes base, which is a 75-25, 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. And again, the colorway is Tea for Two. I will have that in the description box for you down below. And this is what your shorty sock will ultimately look like. I have done, here's the cuff, here's the leg. This is a slip stitch heel that we're going to be working with. A slip stitch heel, your gusset, your leg, and then I did a rounded toe. And this is what the rounded toe looks like. It is literally, it's very rounded over on the edge. There's also a wedge toe that looks much more triangular. It depends on your feet and what are more comfortable for you. And we will talk about all of that going forward. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so happy to be here with you. You have no idea. I am so looking forward to the next class. I can't wait to start recording that for you. And I'm also going to be doing, I'm going to try to do it this week, but again, I will let both YouTube and Instagram know at the same time when a bonus video, you're going to get the first bonus video coming up soon, and that is going to cover different cast on methods. So I'm going to review the long tail again. We're going to cover long tail, German twisted cast on, a cable cast on, and a tubular cast on for both 1x1 rib and 2x2 rib. Woohoo! Party! These things get me excited. I know it seems ridiculous, like why do I care about all these different cast-ons, but you want the cast-on sometimes, in some cases, depending on your pattern, and we'll talk about pattern stitches next week, you want your pattern, the cast-on, to match the pattern and the flow of your sock. This is just knitting minutia that may not interest a lot of you. It makes me so excited. I mean, like I buzz at this stuff. It makes me so happy to talk about. So there you go. And again, I do please recommend that you watch the entire video. Watch the segment for both Two Cirque and for Magic Loop, because there's going to be information that applies to both in both segments. So please watch the whole thing. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment box down below, and I will see you next Saturday. Bye, everybody.